Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick, back once again to take a look at the last batch of X-Wing 2nd Edition pilots. Today, this is the rest of all the Scum pilots we've seen, and just a few disclaimers before we dive into this. All the information here is thanks to the unboxing done by the Battle of Lost Souls YouTube channel. All the links for those are in the description down below. Also, I'm not going to include every single ship in this. Just the other day we did the fire spray thanks to the new article on FFG's website, so I won't cover that again today. Plus, in the FFG unboxing, the last time we covered a bunch of these Scum pilots, we actually covered all of the Aggressor and all of the Hawk pilots as well. So I won't go over those again. I'm trying to avoid doubling up on too much information, and these videos are getting long enough as they are. But for the time being, let's take a look at everything else that's been revealed so far, starting with the Fang Fighter. And the only difference in pilots here is we have consolidated two of the generics into one. The Skull Squadron pilot has replaced both the Concord Dawn Veteran and the Concord Dawn Ace. And we've also added in another unique pilot with Joy Rekov. Now, the Fang Fighter is actually part of Wave 1 in 2nd Edition, which means it will get new pilots. As these ships get re-released, we're going to see new pilots coming across, and for any of us older players that are going to buy the conversion kits, we'll be able to get those pilots separately, and Joy Rekov is one of those. Now, we have seen his ability before, but I'll go through it one more time. While you perform an attack, you may spend one charge on an equipped torpedo upgrade. If you do, the defender rolls one fewer defense die. And that seems pretty cool. You can use that on your primary, you can use that on the torpedo attack itself if it has multiple charges. Seems like it's a good amount of efficiency, but what I really love about Joy Rekov is the fact that he's initiative matched with both Cad Solis and the Skull Squadron pilot. One of the biggest issues with the Fang Fighter in 1st Edition, or as it used to be called the Protectorate Starfighter, is none of these pilots have the same pilot skill, and flying them formation becomes a bit annoying because of that. Now we have two named pilot with pretty decent abilities alongside a generic pilot. I think that really opens up the potential to flying these in formation. And if you do want to invest in Old Terok and Fen Rao, have a bit more of a higher initiative leader, that is also an option as well. Old Terok is pretty much a functional reprint of his former self, except he now hits reinforced tokens as well. And Fen Rao is exactly the same as he always was. And just one more thing to note, the Concord Dawn title has now been hard burned into each of the cards. Plus, it's actually been given a bit of a boost because you no longer have to get the enemy inside your firing arc. You only need to be inside the enemy's firing arc in order to get that evade result. Now, yes, you don't get to add the evade result. You have to change one of your dice, but that's pretty much in keeping with everything going on in 2nd Edition. Very, very, very few things add evade results, and I think that's a fair change. The G1A Starfighter has had a lot of simplification applied to it. We now only have one generic pilot in the Gand Findsman. Ruthless Freelancer has not made it into 2nd Edition, but frankly, it's a generic. We don't need lots of multiple generics anymore. They can have their points adjusted in the app, and that means that it's not really necessary to have this and the Ruthless Freelancer. I will note though, it's gone down to Initiative 1, so that seems like a bit of a nerf, but at the same time, if it's cheaper, I think that's fair enough. Now, previously we did not see Zuckuss, and what's interesting about Zuckuss is he's gone all the way down from PS7 to Initiative 3. But what I love about this is the fact that he has been initiative matched with 4 Lom. His ability has not changed, and I actually quite like this approach. I mean, obviously it's going to mean he's going to cost less relatively anyway, but the fact of the matter is we now have two different pilots on this ship that's probably going to cost the same amount of points but offer completely different list building scenarios. And that's good because previously if you wanted to do the stress build, you had to invest 27 points into 4 Lom. If you wanted to do the Zuckuss build, you had to invest 28 points. Having the same sort of base to build from gives it a bit more flexibility, and I like that a lot. Plus, I love the fact that the Mist Hunter now no longer forces you to take Tractor Beam, it just gives you a cannon slot. And yes, the power level on the cannon upgrades has been dialed back a little bit, but flexibility is always a good thing. Alright, moving on to the Jumpmaster. We have all the same pilots here. They pretty much have the same ability, just tweaked power level. In fact, the power level of everything here is gone down pretty significantly. Manaru and Tel Travura are new reveals for the unboxing just the other day, and Manaru no longer passes target locks. Now, yes, she does technically pass reinforced tokens, but there's no way to give Manaru reinforced tokens. Indeed, there's no way to give her evade tokens either. In first edition, you could get evade tokens onto Manaru by giving her IG-88D and engine upgrades and flying her alongside IG-88C. And now there is no ability to do that because you can no longer give her engine upgrades. So yeah, it still does say green tokens, so that does open up building potential in the future, but I don't know, not passing off target lock tokens just seems a bit harsh. Teltravura is exactly the same as he always was. He uses the charge counter to mark whether or not his ability has been used, and it's now 5 damage instead of 4 because of course that hull threshold has changed. And the Punishing One title, which was previously revealed, only improves the amount of dice in the forward arc, but it does mess around with the upgrade slots, which I do like. I think the fact that all of these are getting a pretty severe nerf is a pretty clear indication to me that these guys are going to get their torpedoes back in 2nd edition. At least that's what I'm hoping. Otherwise, this is just all very depressing. But I think if we get torpedoes back, we could get a bit more viability across the board. Certainly would be a nice thing to have on Dengar, on the contracted scouts, for example, just as long as we don't have any broken combination of upgrades. And the fact that Punishing One switches out crew for Astromech leads me to think that FFG have really taken their time with this one and just made sure we get nothing too broken out of them. Plus, we also have the flexibility of increasing their points if the same thing happens again, so that should be fine. Look, it's sad to see how much this has been powered down, but at the same time, we don't want a repeat of what happened in 1st edition. Okay, moving on to something a little bit more exciting. Let's talk about the Keyrax fighter, which has actually retained all of its pilots. Now, there's no more Vaxi title because, of course, everything the Vaxi does can be done inside the app. In terms of points cost and what modifications we can get, the guys at FFG have confirmed that the Keyrax fighter will be able to take 3 modifications still, which is just gravy. Plus, we have a bit of initiative matching going on. Captain Justero is the same initiative as the Black Sun Ace, and Graz the Hunter, or just Graz now, is the same initiative as Victor Hell. So if we want to do a bit of formation flying, that could be quite possible, especially Justero and the Black Sun Ace. Because yes, there's no harpoon missile anymore, there's no card on the Keyrax which really seems to abuse Captain Justero's ability, but if that ever does come down the track, whether that be a missile or illicit or something, which gets damage onto your opponents and triggers Captain Justero's ability, that's going to be fantastic for the Keyrax fighter because it means you can fly Justero and a bunch of Black Sun Aces in combination and have an initiative match squad that has a nice bit of symbiosis. But apart from that, his ability has not changed. Neither has Victor Hell's. And to be honest, I never really liked Victor Hell's ability. It requires a lot of build around for not a lot of payoff. And the fact that we're talking about stress tokens in 2nd edition, I mean, stress is just so incidental and it's going to happen pretty consistently anyway. I don't feel like it's enough of a payoff for that much build around. So I'm a bit sad to see that, but then again, he might be dirt cheap. So we'll see what happens with that anyway. But yes, Graz the Hunter, massive update here. We don't know if he's going to have the talent upgrade. I'm going to guess he will because that was one of the biggest issues in 1st edition. While you defend, if you are behind the attacker, roll 1 additional defense die. While you perform an attack, if you are behind the defender, roll 1 additional attack die. So this is giving Graz bonuses if he manages to outmaneuver the opponent. In fact, the card outmaneuver is a clear candidate for this guy if indeed he does get the talent slot. The old ability was okay. It gave you a bonus if you were inside the opponent's firing arc, but really that's rewarding you for doing something you otherwise probably don't want to do. What I like about the new version of Graz is FFG are rewarding you for flying in a way that already benefits you, but you get more benefits, and that seems really good. At Initiative 4, I don't think he's going to be able to really take on aces or anything like that, but against big ships in particular, I think this is very good. And I love that he's able to blank out turrets. And I also love that the fact that they have made use of the center line on all the ship's bases. You can now use that on any ship to measure whether you're behind a ship. And this is a great example of the kind of designs we can get if we just add these universal concepts across all the ships in the game. And yes, also speaking of exciting, here's the Aquila fighter, which I really like the look of in 2nd edition. Now we've lost the Cartel Brute. The Cartel Executioner has gone from PS 5 to Initiative 3, which is pretty fair. Now both Tirani and Dalen Obros, the 2 named pilots, have relatively speaking gone down in initiative. Tirani from PS8 down to Initiative 4, Dalen Obros from PS7 down to Initiative 3. I don't really care though, because these abilities have got a significant upgrade. Starting with Delenobros. At the start of the engagement phase, you may choose one shielded ship in your bullseye firing arc and spend one charge. If you do, that ship loses one shield and you recover one shield. Now, the old version, at the start of the combat phase, you may acquire a target lock, a ship inside your bullseye firing arc, is good, but the fact of the matter is you're trading off a guaranteed 2 points of health. And that seems really, really powerful. Yes, you can only use it twice a game, but I think twice a game is honestly enough to get value out of it. I don't know, that ability just feels really, really good. Again, Initiative 3, so there's no guarantee you're going to be able to hunt aces with this. But even so, the ship does have barrel roll. You can position in such a way to force your opponent to use their repositioning moves to get out of this, and that may prevent an ace from taking the tokens they need to defend themselves, and that's a good zoning tactic. And yeah, against big bases, this is going to work a lot of the time and be really consistent. I like that a lot. Tirani Calder, after you perform an attack, each enemy ship inside your bullseye firing arc suffers 1 damage unless it removes 1 green token. And this is a strict upgrade on the old version, because previously if your opponent had no green tokens, or indeed if they had reinforced tokens, they could just say, okay, I'll remove all my tokens, and then they just do nothing. Now this forces action on the part of your opponent. And originally this actually surprised a lot of you guys. I remember when I read that FAQ, which confirmed the fact that Tirani Calder's ability can in some situations do nothing, I got a lot of negative feedback about that, and I can see the frustration there. It does suck to not have a pilot ability do things, but it never bothered me too much because he does force behavior on the part of your opponent. Now this just feels like a massively strict upgrade. Now, yes, it's at Initiative 4, so we're talking about zoning, but again, I still think that's a good tactic. I still think it's going to be very good against big ships, against aces. You can force your opponent not to fly down certain laneways. That still seems pretty good to me. Now, yes, obviously, if he costs too much, that won't be very viable, but I still like both of these ships a lot. They're great aggressive abilities. Low initiative, yes, but you can still probably use Astromechs to improve their dial and barrel roll. I think this is going to be a very legitimate platform moving forward. I think it still is in first edition. I think it's just been overshadowed by other recent releases. Okay, and now a bit of sad news. Well, sad news for me anyway. This is the Lancer Pursuit craft, and this has had some pretty severe nerfs. Revealed yesterday was Sabine Wren and Ketsu Onyo. Now, first of all, Ketsu Onyo, Initiative 5, I like that a lot. That's really, really good, especially considering her ability relies on positioning. I think that's a good, nice buff for Ketsu Onyo. And the fact of the matter is the new Shadowcaster has had a bit of a nerf, but it does work very well with her ability, which is very interesting. Shadowcaster in first edition was very, very efficient, even on Asajj Ventress, because you had a lot of control over small ships. All you had to do was hit them in range 1 to 2, no matter where your mobile firing arc is facing. You always had the ability to move your opponent onto rocks. You could move them out of base contact to help your other ships shoot them. It had a lot of potential. It had a very high ceiling. And I think perhaps this new version of Shadowcaster is probably just going to be cheaper, and they're just going to stick to this lower ceiling, and it's going to have great symbiosis with Ketsu Onyo, but not so much anymore with Asajj Ventress. And Asajj Ventress, now, we've previously seen this card, but I didn't mention the fact back then that this is a picture of Asajj Ventress in Banshee, her Lancer Pursuit craft. The original version is just in a picture of a generic Lancer Pursuit craft, and that leads me to think that when the Lancer Pursuit craft does get a separate expansion, we might see a title card for Banshee, and maybe that new title will work well with Asajj Ventress. So it's not all bad news here. I think that's probably the design we're heading in, but in the meantime, yes, it's had a pretty severe blow, and the fact that it also only has 2 red dice in the mobile firing arc, I don't think it's going to be the powerhouse it once was. However, I'm a Scum player. I think I have to swallow my medicine here and say, look, a lot of ships across the entire game have had a nerf. This is by far and wide the most played Scum ship right now. It's the most consistent Scum ship right now. I think it's fair, as hard as that is for me to say that this has had a nerf, and I think this is ultimately in keeping with what second edition is trying to do. Also, Sabine Wren still does the same thing she always did, except now there's no glitter stim, so there's no way to consistently abuse it. One of the biggest issues in first edition was she did not have an EPT, so we'll see If in second edition that's relevant, whether she gets talent, whether talents are more relevant on her, I don't know, a bit hard to gauge right now. I guess there's also the costings. If she doesn't have a talent slot, she might be significantly cheaper. So we'll see what happens there. Oh, and one more thing to mention, there is no longer gyroscopic targeting. I think this is the thing I'm honestly most salty about, because gyroscopic targeting is what makes the Lancer Pursuit craft different with its mobile firing arc. It's not moving it with perfect information. You have to do it at the end of your turn so your opponent can still counter-fly it. I'm a bit sad to see this go. I honestly thought this was going to be like a burnt-in ability on the Lancer Pursuit craft. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. I really thought that was something that made it unique and something that I was pretty confident was going to stay. The devs have made the comment that Moldy Crow on the Hawk makes the Hawk kind of like the Lancer Pursuit craft. My response to that was, oh, but it doesn't have gyroscopic targeting. But now neither does Lancer Pursuit craft, so it just feels like a bigger Hawk now? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the ship's lost a bit of identity and I'm a bit sad about that. But if it's about addressing power level, I guess I can understand that. Next up we have the Quad Jumper, and there's really not much to say about this. This is pretty much translated directly as it was in first edition into second edition. Psycho Plank has gone from PS5 to Initiative 2. Constable Zuvio from PS7 to Initiative 4. Both fair enough. Space Stack Tractor Array is now burnt into the cards. Apart from that, all of these pilot abilities actually have a functional reprint, so there's not really much to say. It's worth mentioning that Cad Bane no longer adds a bomb slot, so Constable Zuvio can no longer take the bomb generator. Not that he probably really wants to anymore because he doesn't have any shields, but that's no longer an archetype we can push with that. Choku Gunrunner still feels like it's going to be in a good place in second edition. It still has the Space Dark Tractor Array, it'll probably still have Illicit, and it can probably take the Informant, which is the new version of the Intel Agent. So I think that'll still be a viable build moving forward. It'll just be interesting to see whether we can push these other pilots to seeing play, because in first edition, the whole ship really wasn't that viable, but the Jakku Gunrunner I felt was in a good place at least. Okay, moving on to something a bit more spicy, the Skoog H6 Bomber, and this seems to have had a pretty decent upgrade. The Lock Revenant has gone from PS3 to Initiative 2, fair enough. Karthak Pilot no longer exists, and Soul Sigza and Captain Nim have both had a nice upgrade. So is Havoc actually, because now Havoc no longer requires you to equip unique astromechs, and you can now take generic ones, which has a bit of potential. We no longer have unhinged astromech, so that's probably fair enough. But that's always good to see, having a bit more flexibility on these ships. Soul Sigza now no longer has to only use the 1 straight or hards, it can also use the 1 banks. You can use any 1 template to drop bombs. That seems really cool, and Captain Nim has actually taken the old Rebel Captain Nim ability. Rebel Captain Nim no longer exists, plus he also has the added additional upside of while you defend against an attack obstructed by a bomber mine, roll 1 additional defense die. Now that's not as good as the old Scum ability to just gain 1 evade result. Again, there's not many things in the game that do that now, so it's probably fair enough. It's a slight upgrade, and honestly, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I flew that old Scum Nim, that ability was pretty inconsequential, and the fact that it now has had a bit of a nerf, yeah, it doesn't feel like it's much of an upgrade. Now, in terms of Captain Nim's Rebel ability, yes, this has seen a lot of play in first edition, so I can understand why people might be a bit apprehensive about this. I will say though that I don't think this is really a huge deal. In terms of all the degenerative bombing abilities in first edition, Captain Nim wasn't really too high on the list. I think more of like Miranda with Advanced Slam, like the Genius Trajectory Simulator combo, which now no longer works. And the fact that bombs now have to be dropped during the system phase unless you take Genius. Yeah, I don't feel like this is going to be too problematic. Plus, it's on the Scum faction, and that completely changes the environment this is in. So yeah, I think it's going to be okay. Plus, if he is too problematic, we can just increase the points on him, which feels okay. Captain Nim and Amon Azamine might be a really good viable list moving forward, is worth pointing out. We don't know if Amon Azamine has talents, but I think if he does, that's going to be a clear sign that these two together is going to be pretty cool. Have to wait and see how much that costs, and look, if it becomes too much of a problem like Nim Miranda, we can always increase the points to fix that. So that's a good thing moving forward. Next up, we have the Skeet Fighter. Now, I just want to encourage some of you guys, because I've seen a lot of negative comments on the previous video I did on the Empire stuff. A lot of people saying, oh, well, the Empire is clearly rubbish because it doesn't have this, that kind of that. I want to talk to you guys about faction identity, because the Skeet Fighter sits around roughly the same points as the TIE Fighter. It's now a bit more expensive because, yes, the weapon hardpoints burned in, but in first edition, it was sitting around the same kind of place, points-wise anyway. And I want you to have a look at these pilots and compare them to the TIE Fighter pilots. We do not have the same kind of list building potential. We don't have the same kind of swarm potential because we don't have that whole gamut of pilots sitting at the same initiative. We have slightly fewer pilots, but that's not so much the point. We don't have clear symbiosis between these pilots, and that's fair. This is what the Scum faction is all about. It's more about ships functioning by themselves and having sort of janky combos with different platforms and that kind of stuff. But if you want to talk about the real strength of the Empire faction, look at those TIE Fighter pilots, compare them to these Skik interceptors, and you'll see what I mean. Now, all of these named pilots were previously unrevealed, so I'll quickly go through them now. Sunny Bounder, while you defend or perform an attack, after you roll or re-roll dice, if you have the same result on each of your dice, you may add one matching result, which is a functional reprint of his former self. Unfortunately, he can't take Light Skik Interceptor and be a really cheap, just dumb platform anymore. But look, as a one-off by himself with no upgrades, still might be viable. Not too sure. If there's a good cannon that works with this, maybe some kind of utility cannon that just uses 2 dice, I can potentially see him seeing some play. But overall, not consistent enough, I don't think, to see proper meta play. In Ultra, while you defend or perform an attack, you may suffer 1 damage to reroll any number of your dice. And this is a strict upgrade on the old Inaldra, which could only spend shield. Now she can also spend hull points as well. Seems good. Inaldra was never super powerful in first edition. One of the strengths of Inaldra was the fact that she was only 15 points and could take an EPT. Actually, the cheapest skip that could take an EPT, despite the fact that she was a named pilot. Leighton Ashra. Okay, now this is pretty cool. After you defend or perform an attack, if the attack missed, gained 1 evade token. And previously, Leighton Ashra only took this ability when she evaded an attack, not when she's attacking herself. And that's pretty cool. It means if there's any ships at initiative 3, 2, 1, and if you're shooting before them, you get a little bit more value out of this ability. Plus, one of the biggest reasons she didn't see play in first edition is because she had no EPT slot. That really hurt the platform, and I think hopefully moving forward she'll have a talent slot, and with that slight upgrade on her ability, hopefully that means she'll see a bit of play. Quinjast, at the start of the engagement phase, you may gain 1 disarm token to recover 1 charge on one of your equipped upgrades. And this again is a strict upgrade on the old Quinjast ability. Essentially, old Quinjast was reload before reload, except you could do it for free. Now you can reload any charge on any one of your upgrades. So also have a look at talents. I don't know if there's anything too crazy he can interact with. Again, it'll depend on the costings, blah, blah, blah. But you can take talents, you can take torpedoes or missiles. Maybe there'll be a cannon that spends charges one day. Got a nice bit of flexibility and potentially a bit of brewing capabilities in the future. Genesis Red, this makes me sad, guys. After you acquire a lock, you must remove all of your focus and evade tokens, then gain the same number of focus and evade tokens the locked ship has. I don't so much mind the fact that you lose all your tokens, but he's at initiative 4, and that's such a hit to this ability. Basically, the old version of Genesis Red needed VI so badly to have any viability at all, so he could sort of contend with aces, because aces are the ones that usually take a lot of tokens. And yeah, now the new one's initiative 4, I just don't see this seeing play. Token stackers don't really exist in the lower initiatives, at least we don't think that's going to happen so much. Yeah, I'm pretty sad about this, guys. I really loved the idea of Genesis Red when he was originally revealed. I'm like, yes, I want to brew with it. That's really cool. It's really spicy. And he just didn't quite get there in first edition. And the fact that he took a massive nerf just doesn't sit right with me. I mean, this guy never really saw play. He was never really consistent. He was more of a casual card. I don't really know what FFG were thinking here. I mean, I guess they're trying to bring him in line with the power level of everything else in second edition, but Yeah, he never really saw play, so it just seems a bit harsh to me. Plus, it doesn't say green tokens, so you can't take reinforced tokens. And that, again, empowers your opponent to get around this. If they have the option to take a reinforce or a focus token, which a lot of ships can do now, it means they can just take a reinforce and completely blank Genesis Red's ability. Yeah, I'm pretty sad about this. I really was hoping that Genesis Red would get a bit of a push in 2nd edition, but sadly not so. I honestly, guys, do not think Genesis Red will see meta play because of this nerf, and I think that's just a sad thing overall. Serazu at Initiative 5, though, has retained her ability, and I quite like Serazu. I think she definitely deserves to see a bit more play in 1st edition. She's basically the reverse Howlrunner for the Scum faction, and that's pretty good. If Scum ever develop a viable swarm, Serazu could be the leader that they're looking for, but it's not there yet. It didn't quite arrive in 1st edition, so we're still waiting on this pilot ability to see whether it can see some play in the future. Alright, the Starfighter moving forward has lost Black Sun Vigo and Thweek. I'm very happy to see Thweek go. I think he's just a bit too problematic moving forward. He can essentially copy-paste any pilot ability onto the Starfighter frame, and I think that is just a bit dangerous in terms of game design moving forward. And it was a good idea to take him out of the game. If he ever enters back in, I don't think he's going to have the capability to take pilot abilities anymore, and I think that's a good thing moving forward. But Prince Sizor, Dalen, Oberos, and Guri have stayed in the game pretty much with their same abilities. Prince Sizor in particular, yes, has got exactly the same ability. Dalen Oberos has changed slightly though, and I think for the better if I'm to be honest. Initiative 4, yes, pretty much the same as the PS6 of old, but now after you fully execute a maneuver, you may gain 1 stress token to rotate your ship 9 degrees. Sadly, the old Dalen Oberos never really saw play, and I think that's a bit sad. I think his ability was quite ace-like and did have potential. Maybe the points just never really stacked up, and yeah, that's a bit sad, but I think the new one moving forward does have a bit more potential. I like the fact that it now works off any maneuver. Unfortunately, it's a bit hard to be reactive at Initiative 4, but nonetheless, it does give him good zoning capabilities. Plus, it does combo very nicely with the micro thrusters. The ability to do those curved barrel rolls have stayed on the Star Viper, and that's really, really cool. We've already talked about Guri. I love the fact that she's up to Initiative 5. I think she's going to be a legit powerhouse in 2nd edition. Really looking forward to flying with her. But what I'm most interested is the new title, Virago. It actually adds a shield. Also has 2 charges. During the end phase, you may spend 1 charge to perform a red boost. Add a modification slot. Yeah, that seems really, really good. I mean, yeah, look, the boosts are red. They have to happen during the end phase. So you're not really acting on perfect information. You can't react to where your opponent's ships are. But it's still a nice bit of efficiency, considering this platform didn't really have much efficiency in 1st edition. It was all about tricky maneuvering capabilities with that curved barrel roll. I think alongside the curved barrel roll, this seems really, really good. But it is worth pointing out, Virago no longer gives you a system slot and an illicit slot. So it'll be interesting to see whether the Star Viper just has the system slot. I'm honestly going to guess no, because I think adding on advanced sensors was a very powerful thing in 1st edition, and I don't think FFG want to give it to the platform as a whole. Also, the illicit slot, look, I can see that being on every single ship. The illicit slot doesn't really have that many crazy combos with the Star Viper. We no longer have things like Glitter Stim to boost it. It could take contraband cybernetics still, so yeah, I'm not really sure what FFG are thinking in terms of what upgrades we're going to see. But I guess when the app drops, we will see what happens there. But nonetheless, bottom line, Virago looks awesome. Okay, and moving on to the Scum version of the Y-Wing. Syndicate Thug has changed his name to Crimora Goon. Cool, why not? Cavill has essentially kept his old ability, except there's a bit of ambiguity here. While you perform a non-in-arc attack, roll 1 additional attack die. Now, I'm actually curious. It says a non-forward arc attack, but usually we refer to turret attacks with a different symbol. I don't know whether a forward-facing turret gets this benefit. Be curious to see. I'm going to guess not. I think it just means any attack in that quadrant, but clarification will be required nonetheless. Also, Initiative 5. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Andrea Renthal has gotten a completely different ability. Her old ability, stress to get yourself a target lock after you target lock. It never really saw play, plus no APT. Bad, bad, bad. The new version is very similar to Cass Scarlet. which makes sense because both Drea Renfall and Cascala are essentially pirate queens. While a friendly non-limited ship performs an attack, if the defender is in your firing arc, the attacker may reroll one attack die. So kind of a Howl Runner ability, except you also have the ability to reach ships from other sides of the board if you just cluster your ships around your opponent. As long as your Y-Wing has a firing arc facing them, you give a buff to all of your ships all across the board, which is awesome. Plus, it does not specify forward firing arc, which means you can use your turret on this. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I like that a lot. I don't think we can quite squeeze this into a list alongside Cascala, but I think this alone could be quite cool if we could potentially get it in a list alongside 3 of the Crymora goons. That could be really cool. I like the idea behind this. I think it has a lot of potential, a lot of brewing spiciness. I think if we're going for consistency, yes, Cavill will be the better option, but it's nice to have both. I think the Scum Y-Wing has a lot to say in 2nd edition, even without TLT. Next up, we have the YV666. Now, previously unrevealed was Lat's Razzie. At the start of the engagement phase, you may choose a ship at range 1 and spend a lock you have on that ship. If you do, that ship gains 1 tractor token. Now, it has a little added upside of being able to activate on your own ships, and maybe repositioning is going to be very good. I don't know. I didn't like Lat's Razzie in 1st edition. The fact of the matter is your ability only works at range 1 makes me think this feels pretty unplayable still. Yeah, look, I said it before and I'll say it again. If you spend a target lock on an enemy ship, that ability needs to provide you with a significant amount of upside to counteract the fact that you no longer have a target lock to spend on your attacks, which is very powerful. And yes, 1 tractor token at range 1 I don't feel is ideal. Look, I will give it this. The ceiling on this is now much, much higher. Giving your opponent's ships tractor beams when you can put them on rocks. It means you can use it on your own ships to arc dodge. That's really, really cool. But I don't think 90% of the time that's going to happen. I think this ability, the roof is raised, but the floor is still super low, and I'm not that keen on it. Apart from that, yes, we've already talked about Moralo Eval. Being able to fly on and off the board seems really cool. I love the fact that his initiative match with Bosk. Bosk works the same way he's always did, and the Houndstooth allows you to dock with a Z95. Now, the Nushtar Pup card, if you use that with Houndstooth, works exactly the same way as the old Houndstooth, except the new Houndstooth does have the added benefit of being able to just dock any Z95 with it, which is a nice bit of upside. If there's any reason you want to dock a Z95 with the Houndstooth, you now have that option. And speaking of the Z95, yep, here is the final pilots for the Scum faction. The Z95 pilots, the Binyari Pirate, the Black Sun Soldier, which was of course the name of my old prog rock band. Initiative 3, a nice upgrade from PS3. Kato Lichos, we previously spoke about. Click the annotation here if you want to see about him. Nadru Salak. Now, Nadru has had a bit of a downgrade. PS7 to Initiative 4, yep, that feels fair enough. But now his ability, which is sort of lone wolf on your attacks only works on your primary attack. And that's, look, fine. I don't hate that. I like the fact that he now has a red barrel roll natively, which is going to mean he gets more benefit out of this, but he can no longer do this with missiles. He can no longer do it with like Hotshot Blaster or any other card he can equip to his ship. And look, I think that's probably fair enough. I think by just reducing the spikiness of Nadru Salak, making him a little bit less powerful overall is okay, as long as the points reflect that. Essentially what happens if Nadru Salak is beyond range 2 of any of your friendly ships, he's playing like a poor man's X-Wing role. And look, for the 17 points of old, that is a good investment. If you can get a ship that sort of acts like an X-Wing for those points with 1 less shield and a bit less flexibility, that is well worth it in my opinion. And yes, previously mentioned, the Nushtar Pup. Now, if you field this, this becomes the ship that you dock inside the Houndstooth and only deploys once the Houndstooth is destroyed. Now, it does gain the pilot ability of any of the YV666s that get destroyed, and that could be interesting with Lat's Razzie. You can spend your target locks from your Z in order to give away tractor tokens, but again, I don't feel like it's enough upside. I mean, honestly, the Nushtar Pup never really had any crazy combos. Yeah, you can Moralo Eval it off the board and put it back on the board, I guess. That seems interesting. I don't know. I've never really been a fan of the Nushtar Pup or the Houndstooth because it requires you to invest in a game strategy that only works when you're losing the game, and that's not really what I try to do in X-Wing. Houndstooth has always been a bit of a funny card, and look, the fact that Houndstooth can just make you dock with any Z95, and it might be cheaper overall, and it might give it enough value, but overall I don't see myself playing it too often. And that's it. That is all of the Scum pilots for X-Wing 2nd Edition. Guys, I hope you really liked the video. I hope you enjoyed learning about my beloved Scum faction. In the meantime, guys, in the comment section below, let me know what you think of these guys. Like and subscribe, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Reddit, and I will catch you guys later.